Okay, we'll get started on the webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today. In case you miss anything today, or in case for those of the people that haven't attended, we are recording the webinar. So in case you miss any of it, we'll provide a link so you can see the recording afterwards. Firstly, for those who aren't familiar with Central Technology, just like to introduce the company first. We're established in 2002. We're a managed IT services provider, and we have UK data center infrastructure, which we own and manage and provide cloud, telecoms, and connectivity services from. My name is Richard Thompson. I'm the Sales Director, and I'll be talking you through the webinar today. The agenda for today is what is ransomware and WannaCry, the technologies that can help protect against those, as well as cyber attacks, which goes into defending for tomorrow in terms of your IT security. I'll talk a little bit about data security, and I've also put a couple of slides in afterwards for a special treat on GDPR, and just run through the concept of that and what that entails. But we will be running further webinars in July on security, more content on GDPR in the future. And also talk about the security audit report, which is available from Central Technology as well. So firstly, cybercrime in general. For the first time in history, cybercrime has now surpassed traditional crime in the UK, which is from the National Crime Agency's statistics. As well as you can see there, it's costing a total global cost of risen from $3 trillion and is expected to rise to $6 trillion by 2021. So cybercrime, as you've probably seen in the news and in the media, is on the rise, and it's something that we just need to be aware of and try and protect ourselves against. So what is ransomware? Ransomware essentially is a piece of software which runs on your computer, on your server, and it stops you from using or accessing the computer, and it holds your data on there to ransom. It's completely irreversible. And usually you have to phone the ransom company or pay via bitcoins or card in order to unlock the encryption to allow you to use the computer again. If you do have a good backup system in place, obviously you can just restore from that. But if you don't, then you're down to whether you want to pay the ransom or start again on the computer. One case study which I found quite interesting, which shows the effects on different organisations, was a hotel out in Austria, and because their room key system was connected to the computer, when the WannaCry virus malware took place, it stopped all the guests from accessing their computer, accessing their doors. So obviously it was a critical thing for them. Happened out of hours from the IT, and so it came up with a ransom of €1,500, which they just paid, and then the doors were working again. And this is kind of commonplace with this type of software, that they'll put a sensible figure out there that they think they can pull back. The attacks also tend to be on vulnerabilities within systems as well. So, for example, those of you that are still running Windows XP, there's a lot of vulnerabilities on that operating system now. It's very old, and attackers for cyber attacks will often try and exploit these systems that either have recently up-to-date operating systems but don't have the latest updates, or that have really old operating systems such as Windows XP. And they'll also target things, organisations that will get them good coverage as well. So things like hospitals, and as we've seen recently with WannaCry with the NHS. This is a screenshot of an application called Tox. Tox is a number of applications which are available, which is called Ransomware as a Service. And this allows you to build your own ransomware virus. So you put in the simple, as you can see, the simple boxes there, how much you want for the payment, and you download that application, and you can infiltrate that somehow by email or into an organization which locks all their computers with the code and creates a ransom which can go directly into your Bitcoin account. So you can see how easy it is for criminals out there to try and create these viruses and distribute them across networks. And here you can see how that works in terms of, as you follow the numbers through, right from where the code is created. As we can see, you don't have to be a programmer. You can use the ransomware as a service. However, by doing that, a commission payment goes to the ransomware as a service provider. But you would get probably the majority of that, which, as you can see, follows through that path down into the hacker's bank account. So it's a very comprehensive system that's been set up in order to generate money, and cybersecurity and cyber theft now is really the new technology of credit card fraud and phone fraud. So why is WannaCry so popular? It's a very good business model because you don't need any user interaction in order to deploy it if you can get it through the network. Because it's ransomware, it completely locks down the computer or the server, and so it's encrypted. Without the key, it's extremely difficult. And they can exploit that through code and vulnerabilities that might be in the software operating system. And they do that through what we call cyber hygiene, which is where they know that a majority of systems out there, or a good proportion of systems out there, don't have the latest security patches, updates, or latest operating system on. And in fact, a survey from January 2017 says that the average organization is 12 weeks behind a patching process. And then also with information asymmetry, so the marketplace, the criminal marketplace allows them to use and develop this software quickly, and so quickly that the rest can't catch up in terms of updates. So it's a constant balance between the virus and protecting the updates. And also, as we've seen as well, it's very easy to do and very easy to deploy, and ransomware as a service is available on the internet. There are organisations out there which have been set up to try and prevent it. There's a popular one which is nomoreransom.org, and you can go on there, and if, for example, you do get infected by WannaCry or one of these ransomware, they do have a number of ways of potentially unlocking it using popular unlocking codes which have been used previously. So a methodology in protecting your IT needs to cover a number of areas. So prepare, which is based on your users. So it's important to ensure that your users are aware of where to click, what to click, and that what to happen if something does happen in the event of that. Compromise, which is in terms of making sure that you've got the right antivirus, the right software in place to protect. Maneuver, so that's looking at terms of network intelligence and ensuring the network is secure, as well as impact. So if something does happen, you've got a good backup system in place which you can restore from. So I'm going to talk through the main points on key technologies that protect your IT. So these are the key points that you need to consider when protecting yourself against cyber threats such as WannaCry. Antivirus and anti-malware protection, a managed and correctly configured firewall, web filtering, email filtering, an up-to-date operating system, and also an enterprise class backup system. And I'll talk what I mean by an enterprise class backup system later on as well. So antivirus and anti-malware protection. Traditionally, this was a piece of software, antivirus software, that would go on your PC or your Mac, and you would update that perhaps through the internet or maybe through a CD, and it would just scan the files as it goes through. However, times have moved on, and with all good antivirus software now, it does go through a web-based system to check that. So, as you can see here, with WebRoots, which is our preferred product for antivirus, it goes through checks the file or the file hash or the structure of the file, if you like. It checks if it's seen this before. It goes through a number of databases, such as, is it a known file, is it a threat, what's the behavior of the file, before executing that file. And that happens all in a matter of milliseconds while you're using the PC. So it's more of an active intelligence, it's more of an active protection against the latest threats. To expand on that in terms of how that machine works, you can see as in point 1 there in the top left, millions of real-world endpoints. So a lot of people using these antivirus applications and security companies report into this same global database. And the advantage of that means that Webroot can take all the different scripts and all the different database information that's there, and they can use that to analyze files and analyze, for example, URLs, websites, while the users use in order to keep the user protected. And you can see there that there's a huge database in terms of what they're aware of. So 27 billion web addresses that they're aware of, which are across 600 million different domain names. So it really is a wide area of data that they're able to access, and can quickly either deny or accept certain access to files or web services depending on the product that you've got deployed. So a good antivirus and anti-malware protection in place is important. Number of features on that include smarter detection, smarter management, and these are all just ways of ensuring that the antivirus software is constantly up to date. It's an active piece of software, not just something that's updated once every day or two. New threats are being released every minute, and it's important that you have a system where you have a behavior-based, not a signature-based antivirus protection. And that was one of the main reasons why we've chosen to work with Webroot for that, because it's very strong in terms of analysing new malware and protecting against that. Let's talk a bit about web filtering. So web filtering has a number of benefits, and productivity is seen as one of them. So it allows you to control the content for the users and restrict certain sites or restrict certain groups of sites in order to improve productivity. But it also does network and bandwidth management. So if you've got people trying to access certain sites that might drain your bandwidth, or you want to prioritize certain websites or certain cloud applications that you're using, you can do that through the web filtering, which allows your network to run better. One of the key things now for web filtering, which didn't used to be, it was always in the background, is data security. Because if you do get infected by one of these particular viruses, or somebody does click on an email which goes to a certain website, the web filtering looks at that URL or that website that it's trying to access. And just like with the antivirus, it connects into a global threat database. So it's able to see easily what sites it needs to block and what sites it should allow through. And by doing so, it further protects you against cyber attacks, because a lot of these infections come in through spoof emails trying to get users to click on certain areas. And of course, it's fine if it gets clicked on and it gets through and your antivirus picks up on it. But if it's if it's one of the very latest threats, or the antivirus is not up to date, you're leaving your system open. Whereas if you've got web filtering in place, you can really help, again, take another layer of trying to protect against accessing that, downloading it into your network. Email filtering benefits. It's quite similar to web filtering, really. It's just in the other direction. So this is content that's coming into your network. Naturally, it's always best to have the email filtering in the cloud or off your network, off your core network. Our solution is running Penguin, and what that allows you to do is the emails come in to you, it goes via Rowan Penguin in the cloud and gets filtered before it even reaches your network. And again, that increases productivity in terms of what the user's seeing. They don't see emails that are necessary spam. And also you get email continuity, which you can manage. So if, for example, you have trouble with your email server, or you have a power cut and you can't access your server, Rowan Penguin will collect your emails, which you can access via the web, and as soon as the server comes back online, those emails get delivered. Also controls your network bandwidth management, just like web filtering, because it stops all those unwanted emails from even hitting your network and being downloaded by the email server. And again, one of the highlights now of this is data security. And a good email filtering package will help with data security, because you can tailor what type of content, what type of emails that come through, and you can add certain blacklists and whitelists. And again, just like the antivirus and the web filtering, they connect to large global databases that tell them what is good and what is bad in terms of traffic. Again, adding another extra layer of protection for security. I want to run through here on some operating system myths. So there's a number of reasons why you might not want to update your operating system, and some of which, you know, can be true in certain scenarios. But I think it's important to run through these. So, for example, you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, I don't need to update my operating system because it takes a long time. The one I've got running is fine. I've got antivirus on it. It's all good. However, if, for example, somebody does click on something and it does get through, and your operating system is out of date, even if you've got the latest updates, if the operating system is really old, so for example Windows XP, there will be vulnerabilities in that can be exploited, and it's important to update the operating system from that point of view. Everybody says the version I'm using has everything I need. Again, not necessarily the case. New versions include a lot of additional features, but also a lot of additional benefits in terms of security and covering vulnerabilities that might be there. And another myth is that there could be compatibility problems with software and hardware. That is true in some cases, particularly with some older databases, but it would be best to speak with the database company and seeing how they are moving away from that, and certainly to put into the IT roadmap to either get a newer version of that software or look to see if it's possible to change software products if you're having to stick with a really old operating system for a long period of time. Because if that does become an issue, or you do get infected, that's going to bring the software down, which is no good to anyone. So putting a plan in place and a roadmap in place of moving away from older operating systems is important. Also, some people say, well, operating system versions, the new ones, have bugs and stability issues. Again, that could be true with the very newest version, but updates are released quite quickly and can be released very quickly, in fact, with the new operating systems. So after it's been out for a number of weeks, it's often all the major stability issues have been resolved. And it's not true that old operating system versions, they will still have bugs and stability issues just like the new ones. So it's important to have the latest version. Enterprise class backup system, which I mentioned earlier. There are a number of backup applications out there. There are a number of ways you can back up. Our preferred method is using Veeam software, and that allows you to back up your server using an image level backup, which captures the whole image of the server rather than just the files. We always recommend what we call a 3-2-1 backup strategy. So that's 3 different copies of the data on 2 different types of media, with one of those being one copy of your data off-site. And as well as doing that, then we also usually recommend a GFS retention policy, which is the grandfather, father, son. So, for example, you might have weekly backups, which would be your son, a monthly backup, which would be your father, and then an annual backup, which would be your grandfather. The idea of having that particular backup strategy in place is so that if somebody does delete something and you've only realized a week later, then you can go back to that backup. Similarly, if you get infected or there is an issue with the network and you lose the data, then you can go back further in case something happened to that data in between. So it's just looking at the risk, and it doesn't take much to make sure that that strategy is set up and those extra backups are in place. It's also important to have the correct hardware in place as well. A number of organisations have been running on the sort of like the smaller, what are called NAS drives or network attached storage drives in replacement tapes. These are okay, but they don't provide a very quick backup, and certainly the restoration time is very slow. So it's not always the best. And if those are in place, then it's important to consider how long it would take to get the system back up and running, and would that be an acceptable length of time. Audit and reporting is important. Got to have good audits and reports out of that. In some instances, for example in Veeam, you can turn on your virtual machines, you can run them in the cloud. It can take a snapshot of that machine at that time and send you a full report to show you that that backup has been working, it's been running, turned it off again and everything's fine. So you can go to real extremes like that to make sure that the backup is good. And we offer backup as a service, which is a box that goes on site, so you've got the correct hardware in place. It uses Veeam software for good image level backup, and that runs off to the cloud as well. So you've got the 3-2-1 backup strategy there in terms of ensuring that you've got off-site, off-network, and on-premise. And the reason why that's important, in particular with data security, is because if you do get infected with something like WannaCry and you're using a NAS drive is just a network device. So it could easily become encrypted in this, or destroyed with the same virus as your server and on-premise servers that you've got. So it's important to keep a completely separate backup of the data off-site, off-network. So defending for tomorrow, the key points that we wanted to go through today were antivirus, anti-malware protection, managed and correctly configured firewalls, web filtering, email filtering, up-to-date operating systems, as well as the latest updates and patching on the operating system, and an enterprise class backup system in case anything goes wrong. You can relax and easily and quickly restore. So just very quickly, I want to just run through GDPR. So General Data Protection Regulation is essentially a practice that's coming into effect on the 25th of May 2018. It's a regulation, so it does have a direct effect, and it's about protecting your data. It's about protecting people's data, and the government is committed to implementing GDPR, even if there are some changes after the Brexit. There's a number of key points around GDPR that I wanted to bring up. So there's a number of practical challenges within the organisation. So, for example, where do we start? What information do you hold? And running what we call a data mapping exercise is a way to do that. So that's a case of looking at your data. What type of data do you hold? Where do you hold that data? Is there any data sharing? Does that go out to external organisations? Are you using software as a service, such, for example, as Microsoft Office 365? So is that data in the cloud? Do you know where that data is stored? And who has access to that? So really, it's about carrying out an assessment of your data on the network, and then creating a risk assessment, just as you might do in a quality policy, to assess where the risks could be in terms of having that data. And also, there's quite a lot of talk around marketing and consent as well with GDPR, because they're changing the way in which that works. So a person has to give explicit consent for their data to be stored and used. And I think where the forms where if people didn't untick, data would be used and sold, will be days gone by. And I think now that will become effect in terms of trying to protect people. So that's an exercise, and there's a lot of content to GDPR, and we're holding a webinar in July, and we'll talk more about that at that point. So I wanted to thank you for joining our webinar today. The two key takeaways really are Obviously the list that we sent through in terms of what are the areas that you need to look at to protect, and the fact that Central Technology can provide a security audit report. So either contact myself or your account manager to arrange that. And finally, we're looking to hold the next webinar date in July. So those of you who have already signed up for this webinar, we'll let you know when the next webinar is. Thank you very much for your time, and we will send you a link posted on the website for the recording as well, so you've got access to all the slides. Thank you. Bye-bye.